continuing in our topical study. As you know, this is the fourth week on wealth. We've been in this topic for the past several weeks, and we've been looking at observations about wealth that Solomon made throughout the course of his life. And we've covered 12 of the 16 observations. I gave you 16 observations. They're listed on your outline. And just to remind you of the ones that we went through, I'm not going to review them, but I will mention them. Wealth is a blessing from God. Wealth is acquired with diligence and hard work. Wealth is the consequence of wisdom. Wealth is best gained by honest practices. Wealth is best earned gradually and slowly. Wealth is often targeted by society. Wealth is not measured by appearances. Wealth is power in this world. It was just an observation that Solomon noted and witnessed. It's just how it is in this fallen world. Wealth is a temptation to all kinds of evil. We know that all too well. Wealth is often squandered. Wealth is good to share. And wealth is wise to save. Those were the 12 observations that we looked in weeks past. And so for our time this morning, we'll pick up where we left off and look at the final 4 observations that I have noted there on your outline. The 13th observation that Solomon made about wealth in this world is that wealth is not the most important thing in life. Solomon knew that. He recognized that. The late Irish poet and playwright, and I've mentioned his name before, not a Christian, Oscar Wilde, once said these words, "When I was young, I thought that money was the most important thing in life. Now that I am old, I know it is." Truth be told, there are many people who feel the same way about money as Oscar Wilde did. As a young man, money was most important to him. As an old man, that conviction just grew all the more. It grew stronger. Nothing was more essential to life than money, according to Wilde. Wilde enjoyed the finer things of life and knew that money was the only way to acquire those things. He had extravagant spending habits, overspending in many cases, living beyond his means. He had a reputation for decadence and hedonism. He loved pleasure, tried to maintain a lifestyle of luxury by enjoying travel and dining and entertainment, recreation, expensive hobbies. He spent money freely, accrued many, many debts. And that's why he concluded that money was the most important thing in life, because without it, there were limitations on what he could do. Money in his mind was paramount. It was chief. It was supreme, superior compared to all things. And in many ways, he couldn't imagine living without it. We might think that Wilde's perspective is an extreme perspective, but when you come to think about it, it's not that foreign. Many people share his perspective. For many people, money is everything. Everything in life revolves around money, some would say. The clothes you wear, the food you eat, the place you live, the car you drive, it all revolves around money, how much money you have. Everything from entertainment to various experiences, prosperity to productivity, health to hobbies is about money. Money provides freedom, opportunity, options. Money offers a measure of security and stability, even safety and survival. Much can be achieved and accomplished with money. And so for those reasons, many believe that money is the most important thing in life. It's superior to all things. But is it? Is having money and plenty of it the chief end of man? Well, in the book of Proverbs, Solomon makes it clear that money is not the most important thing in life. As a matter of fact, it's not even, when you're looking at a list of things that could be before it, it's not even the second or third or fourth thing that's important in life. Money takes a backseat to many things. It's inferior to a lot of things. For instance, and we'll see this in the book of Proverbs, because we're going to walk through these passages very quickly, but it's inferior to wisdom. It's inferior to knowledge. It's inferior to humility and integrity. inferior to loyal love and kindness, inferior to peace and harmony, inferior to quality relationships, inferior to righteousness, a good reputation, inferior to godly counsel. I like this one. It's inferior to an excellent wife. I mean, how many men would trade in a wife for riches? And most importantly, it's inferior to a healthy fear of the Lord. All those things are more important than money, and we see this in the book of Proverbs. And again, just for a moment, I want us to walk through each of those areas because I want us to understand, fully understand, that when it comes to what matters most, money doesn't even make it onto a top 10 list. It's not the most important thing in life. And if we're tempted to see it that way, then we need to learn and listen from the wise, divinely inspired words of Solomon here. I want us to quickly look at all the Proverbs that elevate other things over wealth. And again, this will be quick. We're going to speed through these things. Turn over to Proverbs chapter 8. Here we see wisdom and knowledge as more important than riches and wealth. Proverbs chapter 8. This is that chapter where wisdom is personified as a wise woman, and she brags and boasts about her superior benefits. Lady Wisdom says, essentially, I'm better than all material and monetary resources. Look at Proverbs 8, verses 10 and 11. Take my instruction, Lady Wisdom speaking here, and not silver, and knowledge rather than choicest gold. Well, why is that? Why should we listen to her? Take her wisdom, take her knowledge. Verse 11, for wisdom is better than jewels, and all desirable things cannot compare with her. It doesn't get any clearer than that. Wisdom derived from God, His word, is better than wealth. The wisdom found in God's word is more valuable than riches and rare gems. There's no material thing that compares to wisdom, Solomon is saying. Nothing like it, has no equal. Money is second rate to wisdom. Look down a few verses to verses 18 and 19. Riches and honor are with me. Again, Lady Wisdom still speaking. Enduring wealth and righteousness. Listen to what she says. Verse 19. My fruit is better than gold, even pure gold, and my yield better than choicest silver. Again, wisdom is better than gold and silver, the finest metals on the planet. Better than precious metals, coins, capital, currency, all of it. Wisdom will always prove more beneficial than wealth. Wisdom can do far more for you than wealth can. Look at Proverbs chapter 16, verse 16. You're going to have to turn to these verses very quickly. Proverbs 16:16, another proverb elevating wisdom over wealth. How much better is it to get wisdom than what? Gold. And to get understanding is to be chosen above what? Silver. And so when it comes to having wisdom or wealth, Solomon would choose wisdom every day of the week, twice on Sunday. Wisdom is far more important. But it's not just wisdom that's more important than wealth. There are other things too. Go back a few verses. We'll stay in chapter 16, verse 8. Here we see how righteousness is superior to wealth and riches. Proverbs 16:8. Better is a little with righteousness than great income with injustice. Solomon here says that minimal possessions, and again, the idea is really poverty, but with righteousness is better than many possessions, affluence, prosperity with dishonesty. In other words, if someone needs to lie and cheat and steal to obtain great wealth, then it's better to be broke and bankrupt with righteousness. It would be great to have righteousness and great income through honest and just practices. But if a choice between righteousness and money needs to be made, then Solomon says righteousness is far more important. A man's integrity is more important than his income. Morality, ethics, Honesty, holiness is superior to wealth. Great wealth is not worth compromising righteousness. Better to be poor, live in privation, penniless with righteousness. You don't need to turn there, but Solomon says in Proverbs 28, verse 6, better is the poor who walks in his integrity than he who is crooked, though he be rich. Again, a man's integrity surpasses riches, especially when riches are acquired through crooked and corrupt practices. Since we're already in this chapter, look at verse 19. Proverbs chapter 16, verse 19. Here we see how humility is more important than wealth. It is better to be humble in spirit with the lowly than to divide the spoil with the proud. Dividing the spoil was a military term, a military expression or phrase referring to shared benefits or shared profits that came from conquering an enemy. Here the expression simply means to be rich and wealthy, but it's wealth acquired through proud and arrogant and oppressive practices. It's economic prosperity at the expense of others. Well, Solomon says it's better to have a humble disposition and live in lowly conditions than to have impious pride with ill-gotten gain. Instead of arrogantly and proudly trampling others, taking advantage of others, ruining others' lives to get ahead financially, it's better to humbly and selflessly consider others and have nothing monetarily. One commentator summarized it like this: humble discomfort beats proud comfort. Humble discomfort beats proud comfort. Poverty with humility is superior to prosperity with pride. Go over one chapter. Look at Proverbs chapter 17, verse 1. Here we see how peace and harmony in the home is superior to wealth. Better is a dry morsel and quietness with it than a house full of feasting with strife. That word feasting in the Hebrew, it literally means sacrifices. So this is a house full of sacrifices. The idea is that this house is filled with meat from animals that were slaughtered. It's meant to be a picture of plenty and abundance and all of your needs met and richness and affluence. But if it's accompanied by strife and discord, fighting and quarreling, as Solomon says, then it's not worth it to have all of those things. It's not worth the riches and the affluence. He says it's better to eat a dry morsel with peace and harmony in the home than to have riches and wealth with problems. Crumbs and crackers with peace, far better, superior to wealth with strife. Again, the ideal situation would be peace with prosperity. But if it's a choice between peace or prosperity, if it's a choice between poverty with harmony versus riches with strife, Solomon says peace and harmony are better, far better. Harmonious relationships are more important than wealth. Turn over to Proverbs chapter 20, verse 15. Proverbs 20, verse 15. Here we see godly counsel as more important than wealth. There is gold and an abundance of jewels, but, contrast, the lips of knowledge are a more precious thing. Lips of knowledge refers to lips that impart knowledge to others. It refers to a godly counselor, a wise man or woman. And Solomon says, when you have a person like that in your life, a person who imparts wisdom or sound instruction, then it's more prized and precious than gold and jewels. More precious than an abundance of jewels. It's rare to find someone who can speak wisely and righteously and knowledgeably. And so when you find someone like that, view them as more important than all the wealth that you have in your pocket, in your bank account. Do you see godly counselors, godly friends, brothers and sisters in Christ that way? You are more valuable to me than all the money that I have in my bank account. Lips that impart knowledge, so precious to me. Solomon elevates that above wealth. Look at Proverbs chapter 22, verse 1. Here we see a good reputation as more important than wealth. Proverbs 22, verse 1. A good name is to be more desired than great wealth. Favor is better than silver and gold. A good name, in other words, an outstanding reputation, a quality character, an honorable standing in the eyes of others. To have a good name and favor before others means that you are well thought of, highly esteemed for the right reasons, because you have a godly character and there's a godly conduct about the ways that you live. It means that you're admired and respected and trusted for being virtuous. Solomon says that's more important than great wealth. Far better than riches, gold, and silver. Look at Proverbs 31, verse 10. Here we see an excellent wife as better than wealth. 31, verse 10. An excellent wife, who can find? For her worth is far above jewels. An excellent wife, who can find? The answer to that rhetorical question is not no one. It's not Solomon, but the writer is not saying that she doesn't exist. That's not his point. It's simply saying that an excellent wife is rare, scarce. They're few and far between, hard to find. There aren't many excellent wives in the world. And that's why when a man finds an excellent wife, her worth is greater than jewels and gemstones. A godly wife. And when a man has that, a wife who thrives and flourishes in the home, in her God-given roles and responsibilities, more valuable than riches and wealth. A wife who fears the Lord is a true treasure. She surpasses money and material possessions. Again, you ask, how many men would trade in a wife for wealth? Much wealth. I bet many men would. Solomon says an excellent wife is far better. One more proverb. Turn back to Proverbs 15, verse 16. Proverbs 15, verse 16. Here we see how a fear of the Lord is more important than wealth. Better is a little with the fear of the Lord than great treasure and turmoil with it. People who fear God, and the idea, you know what it means, to love God, to submit to God, to obey God, to worship God, revere Him, respect Him, even if they have limited resources and modest means, have far more than people who have great wealth and material possessions, especially when that wealth is joined with trouble and turmoil. Your relationship with the Lord is of far greater worth than great treasure. And so as you can see, beloved, many things surpass wealth and riches. The Proverbs overwhelmingly teach that money is not the most important thing in life. Far from it. It's not paramount. It's eclipsed by at least 10 things, 10 other things. And that's just what we see in the book of Proverbs. So, beloved, guard yourself from ranking wealth over other things. Don't look at your bank accounts, your riches, your crypto accounts, whatever it is, and see it as, that's the most important thing to me. There's other things that are far more valuable. It's folly to make money your main aim in wealth. And Solomon knew that. He knew that well. He observed it. Well, that now brings us to our next observation, a 14th observation. Wealth is fleeting. Wealth is fleeting. In other words, it's temporary, short-lived, doesn't last. It's not something that we can take with us when we die. We can't zeal our wealth onward to heaven, have it waiting there for us. It doesn't work that way. Wealth is a fleeting resource for this life alone. And yet sometimes we passionately pursue wealth, again, as it's the most important thing, acting like it's something that we can keep forever. Some years ago, we don't really do it now, but some time ago, Julie and I would occasionally watch the TV show Shark Tank. Some of you might be familiar with it. It's a show where entrepreneurs pitch their business ideas to a panel of wealthy investors. The investors are known as sharks, and they decide whether to invest in people who have these startup companies or small businesses that are trying to get off the ground. But one thing that these sharks, these multi-billion dollar investors would always talk about is how hard they had to work to make their money. They would always brag about how driven they were to be successful, what they had to do to quote unquote make it, and how they had to sacrifice so much, 80, 90, 100-hour work weeks, grueling schedules, minimal sleep, early mornings, late nights, missing time with family. It was amazing to me the enormous amount of time, effort, and energy they invested to acquire wealth. The pursuit of wealth consumed their life, consumed it. Their passion to be rich, to be prosperous, affected nearly every aspect of life. They wore themselves out for riches. And yet, as we all know, it's fleeting. It's all fleeting. In the end, when death comes to a man's doorstep, all that wealth is left behind. It's gone in the blink of an eye. Turn over to Proverbs chapter 23, verses 4 and 5. Notice how this proverb talks about the fleeting nature of wealth. Proverbs 23, verse 4. Do not weary yourself to gain wealth. Cease from your consideration of it. When you set your eyes on it, it is gone. For wealth certainly makes itself wings like an eagle that flies toward the heavens. Now, just to be clear, this proverb is not speaking against hard work or industrious labor or someone having a good, solid work ethic. This isn't a contradiction of all the proverbs that talk about diligence and employment and earning a living. This proverb is about killing yourself to obtain wealth. Going to extreme lengths where the pursuit of wealth is all-consuming, where it controls every aspect of your life. This is a warning to the person who eats and drinks and sleeps wealth. Every thought is devoted to making money. Every waking hour is a preoccupation with riches. John Kitchen said it like this: this is the person who sacrifices everything, family, health, time, God, etc., in an effort to gain a life of untouchable wealth. Verse 4 says, do not weary yourself to gain wealth. In other words, don't labor to the point of exhaustion for money, as if that's the only thing worth living for. Every ounce of energy should not be exerted on that one thing. There are other things that time and energy must be spent on. There needs to be balance to a man's life. The pursuit of money can't monopolize a man or dominate a man. Verse 4 goes on to say, cease from your consideration of it. Literally in the Hebrew, with understanding, stop. With understanding, stop. Meaning that a man should be wise and stop wearing himself out for wealth. Be wise enough to end this all-consuming ambition for riches. Understand that toiling and tormenting yourself for money is not a proper balance or a proper perspective in life. I like what one commentator said at this point. He said, those who aim at great wealth fill their hands with busyness more than they can grasp, so that their life is both a perfect drudgery and a perpetual hurry. But one must not be such a fool, laboring relentlessly to be rich. Be not a slave to wealth like those who rise up early, sit up late, and eat the bread of painful labors, all to be rich. Moderate labor is wisdom and duty, but immoderate labor is sin and folly. Life must not be a constant toss of care and concern for riches, contriving new ways and setting our wits to obtain wealth. And so the warning in verse 4 is, do not let wealth be this all-consuming drive, this all-consuming ambition, pursuit in life. And then in verse 5, we see why. Verse 5 is the reason behind the warning in verse 4. When you set your eyes on it, that is wealth, it is gone. For wealth certainly makes itself wings like an eagle that flies toward the heavens. In short, wealth is fleeting. It's fleeting. That's the reason. That's why wealth must not be an all-consuming pursuit. Because when you set your eyes on it, that is, gaze at it or absorbed with it, engrossed in it, when wealth is the only thing that you are fixed and focused on in life, then just realize that it won't be long before it's gone. Doesn't last forever. Either it will leave you or you will leave it. It's bound to disappear and vanish. Eventually it will slip through your fingers, whether you like it or not. Now you see it, now you don't. It's gone that quickly. At some point, wealth flies away. Middle of verse 5. For wealth certainly makes itself wings like an eagle that flies toward the heavens. How's that for imagery? You can just envision it and picture it. Envision wealth as an eagle that grows and develops wings and then flies off into the sunset, never to be seen again. Commentator Eric Lane described it like this: wealth is the nest egg you have laid with toil and trouble that hatches out, sprouts wings, and disappears into the sky like an eagle, never to be seen again, gone where it can't be recovered. Beloved, at some point, that will be true of all your money and all your material possessions. Everything that you lay your eyes on at some point will be gone. Gone, vanish, disappear. Every tangible object that you treasure, every checking account, savings account, investment account, brokerage account, whatever it is, retirement account, every piece of property and real estate, all that cash, all that jewelry and gemstones, everything that you have, the fortune you have amassed, all of it, it's only a matter of time before, to use the language of the proverb, before it flies away to another place or to another person. It's fleeting, short-lived, passing away, temporary, totally unstable. It's just lost in an instant, gone in a moment. We can't keep it or hang on to it forever. It's like the flowers of the field. Here today, gone tomorrow. And yet some of us pursue it with such intensity and fervency. That's our great aim in life. Treating it like it's something that we'll never lose. It's amazing how fervently we pursue money when in the end it's all left to someone else or something else, some institution. Passionately pursuing riches that inevitably won't last. Puritan Thomas Fuller said, "Riches are long in getting with much pains, hard in keeping with much care, quick in losing with more sorrow. Riches may leave us while we live, we must leave them when we die." Well, it doesn't serve us beyond this life. We know that, and yet we still pursue it so passionately and persistently. Doesn't benefit us at all beyond this world. Does us no good when we step into eternity. Solomon said in Proverbs 27, verse 24, "Riches are not forever, nor does a crown endure to all generations." Riches are not forever. It just says it plainly, clearly. Those things are fleeting and elusive. They eventually slip through our fingers. Like man, wealth is but a vapor. Beloved, we need to keep this in mind when we acquire wealth. and riches. Yes, God has given us the ability, the responsibility, the opportunity to create wealth, to labor and work in this world. He wants us to earn a living. He wants us to have an income. He wants us to be good stewards and managers of our finances. He gives wealth as a blessing, as we saw in Proverbs chapter 10, verse 22. But you need to remember, it's still fleeting. It's still fleeting. You can't set your eyes on it acting like you'll never lose it, because one day it will be gone. It will fly away. 15th observation that Solomon made about wealth in this world. Wealth is a false hope. Wealth is a false hope. It's undeniably true that, and I'll admit this, that wealth does buffer us from some sorrows and struggles in life. It would be naive for anyone to think that wealth doesn't benefit a person's life. Solomon doesn't deny that either. Wealth shields us to some degree from certain pains and problems. For example, people who have money don't need to worry about where their next meal is going to come from, or if they're going to have food on the table, or what kind of food they can afford to eat. With money, people can easily pay bills and rent and mortgage, pay the electric. People with money don't get evicted or face foreclosure. Having sufficient funds can also reduce stress associated with unexpected expenses and emergencies. It can enhance a person's quality of life, expand opportunities, improve living conditions. Money can even provide more control over a person's choices, allowing them to pursue interests without being constrained by financial limitations or restrictions. And so on some level, wealth provides a sense of earthly protection and stability and security. I'm sure if I asked all of you, what would you rather be, rich or poor, most of you, if not all of you, would say, well, I would prefer to be rich rather than poor. Because you know that life would be easier to manage. You know that certain trials and troubles could be avoided. You could have better provisions, better opportunities, more protection, safety, security. Wealth does that for people. And Solomon observed this to be true. He said in Proverbs chapter 10, verse 15, "The rich man's wealth is his fortress. The ruin of the poor is their poverty." In that proverb, Solomon is simply saying that with wealth, a rich man has protection and security and stability. But the poor man can't afford those same things and has a lack of protection. He has insecurity, uncertainty. Proverbs 10:15, "A rich man's wealth is his fortress." A fortress is a military stronghold. It's a well-guarded city that doesn't allow enemies and adversaries in. It's a place of peace and rest. Wealth is a fortress. Solomon admits that to some level. The rich are far more secure in this life than the poor, in an earthly sense. It's just a matter of fact. Riches insulate a man's life in many ways. And so wealth offers a great deal to someone. But at the same time, it is a double-edged sword. The danger of wealth is that a man may learn to hope in it more than he should. He may begin to trust in his riches, may think that he's completely immune to life's problems, may depend on riches far too much, may even think that riches will shield him from death. Some people think, I got all this money, I'm going to live forever. Some people are so self-deceived that they think that way. Or it's going to shield them from divine judgment and punishment. And when it gets to that point, wealth becomes a false hope. Even though it may shield a person from some things, it can't shield a person from everything. Notice what Solomon writes in chapter 11, verse 4. Chapter 11, verse 4. What a great proverb that puts wealth in its proper perspective. "Riches do not profit in the day of wrath, but righteousness delivers from death." Day of wrath refers to divine punishment, some form of divine punishment. God's wrath is in view here. It's a day of retribution for a person. It's when God decides to judge a man according to his deeds. In the Old Testament, day of wrath typically referred to a life-threatening disaster, a moment of crisis in life that may bring about death, like a serious illness or accident. Doesn't necessarily refer to eschatological judgment, end times judgment. I don't think that's what Solomon has in view here. It's referring to divine punishment that a man might face in this life. Well, Solomon says, no amount of money can shield a man from that. No amount of money can protect a man from that. Wealth can't protect a man from divine punishment. God can't be bribed or bought off. His judgments aren't swayed or influenced by wealth, by how much money a man has. Doesn't care about how much money a man makes or owns. Riches do not profit on the day of wrath. They are of no value, none whatsoever, no advantage at all. They don't tip the scales in a man's favor. Wealth does nothing when a man is punished by God, when he has to stand before God or to give an account, some account to God for his life. Wealth can't keep a man from calamity and tragedy and disaster. Can't keep a man from dying. And it certainly can't stop a man from being judged by God. And so even though wealth can provide some protections in life, as we saw in Proverbs 10:15, this proverb makes it clear that those protections are limited. When a day of calamity or disaster comes, a day of death arrives, money can't stop it or make it go away. When God judges a man, riches mean nothing, absolutely nothing. But then notice what Solomon writes next. But righteousness delivers from death. Righteousness does work in a man's favor. Righteousness has value. It offers an advantage. It protects and preserves a man's life. Typically, righteousness will keep a man from, and the idea here, I think in the context of the proverb, is a premature death. He won't die because he's making unrighteous decisions, living unwisely before God, and then God judges him prematurely, having a premature death. It doesn't mean that a righteousness will keep a man from dying physically. We know that all men are going to die physically. That's not what Solomon is saying, but it can prevent an early death. Righteousness can deliver from potential disaster and calamity and tragedy. It can prompt God's protection from the ravages of life. The righteous tend to escape difficulties, at least in the book of Proverbs, according to Solomon and what he observed in life. Alan Ross said this, righteousness which pleases God is more valuable than riches when anticipating divine justice. It leads to a lifestyle that promotes rather than endangers life. And so when it comes to righteousness or riches, Solomon says righteousness is more valuable, far more valuable. Riches are a false hope. They can't save, they can't rescue a man, they can't deliver a man from any disaster or divine punishment or death. They don't profit in the day of wrath. Go down to verse 28. Notice what Solomon writes there. Chapter 11, verse 28, he who trusts in his riches will fall, but the righteous will flourish like the green leaf. Contrast here is between those who trust in riches, i.e. the wicked would be in view, and those who trust in the Lord, the righteous. Solomon says those who trust in riches will fall. To trust in riches means that a man places his hope and his confidence and his reliance and his faith, his assurance in wealth. And when that happens, wealth becomes a god. It's his object of worship. It's the main thing that a man looks to for help and assistance and support. A man thinks that he can lean and rely heavily on his riches in all seasons and situations in life. His trust is not in the Lord, it's in his money. And Solomon says that a man like that is just bound to fall. He will fall. Riches will fail him. They will prove unreliable, bring a man down. He won't flourish. He won't thrive. He will fall. Come to ruin, really, is the idea. Riches are not a sovereign source of power and protection. At some point, they will fail a man, especially when a man is hoping in those riches, thinking that those riches will shield him and protect him, ultimately, from everything. Middle of verse 28. But the righteous will flourish like a green leaf. The righteous have a different object of worship. They have placed their hope and confidence and assurance and trust and faith in something else, or I should say, in someone else. The Lord is their trust. He is a sovereign source of power and protection. He is a sure hope, a firm foundation. And those who trust in him, the righteous, flourish. You got to love this imagery. Flourish like a green leaf. What do you think about when you envision a green leaf? Something that's alive, right? Something that's vibrant and flourishing. It's thriving. A green leaf signifies vigorous, abundant life. It's a picture of prosperity and fruitfulness, an illustration of productivity, effectiveness. The righteous thrive by trusting in the Lord. Again, beloved, riches can't provide ultimate safety and security. A measure, yes, but at some point they will fail you. They can't do what the Lord can do for you. There's no comparison. Look at Proverbs chapter 18, verses 10 and 11. Love these two verses. I love the contrast that we see in these two verses. It's a contrast between true hope, safety, security in the Lord, and false hope, safety, and security in riches. Proverbs 18, verse 10. The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous runs to it and is safe. Verse 11, a rich man's wealth is his strong city, and like a high wall in his own imagination. The great refuge of the righteous, i.e. believers, Old Testament saints, is stated in verse 10. It's the Lord. The Lord is a great refuge. The righteous run to the Lord for protection. Running metaphorically describes a wholehearted trust in God's protection. The righteous run to him and to him alone. In him they find safety and security. He meets all of their needs. His name is a strong tower. In other words, his character, his attributes, his reputation, his love, mercy, faithfulness, loyalty, kindness, all of those things are wrapped up in his name. God is a mighty fortress for the righteous. He is a protected palace for the righteous, an impregnable fortress or bastion. By putting their trust in the Lord, the righteous have true, lasting hope, true and lasting peace, stability, and security. But a rich man, and in this context, it's referring to an unbeliever who trusts in his riches. The rich man, well, his wealth is a strong tower and city. That's what he sees it as. Wealth is what he runs to. Wealth is where he seeks safety and security. But notice what the end of verse 11 says. And like a high wall in his own imagination. In other words, a rich man truly believes, is so self-deceived, that wealth is like an unscalable wall that can't fall or fail. That's what the rich man thinks in his own imagination. He thinks that money will keep him safe and secure and shield him from the pains and problems of life, all of them. So self-deceived that he places great confidence and riches instead of in the Lord to protect him and to preserve his life. His own imagination has led him to believe that. But it's not real. It's not reality. It's not true. It's a false hope. Money is an impotent defender and protector. That's his point. It It can't shield a man from every form of disaster and danger, but the Lord can. The Lord can shield a man from all of those things. The Lord has the power and might to do what money can't do. The Lord is a strong tower. He is a true refuge. Summarizing these verses, John Kitchen writes this: one proverb emphasizes absolute security, verse 10, and the other imaginary security, verse 11. The first looks at security from a heavenly perspective, the second from an earthly one. Trusting wealth may seem to pay for a while, but eventually, in the end, its inability to protect and deliver is uncovered. Woe to the one who rests his hope in riches. Riches are a false hope. At some point, beloved, wealth will fail you if that's what you're hoping in and trusting in. It can't save. It can't safeguard you from every form of adversity and affliction and misfortune. It can't shield your life. But the Lord can. He can do those things that money can't do. Are you one who trusts in riches? Is your hope and confidence and wealth? Do you look to it for safety and security and stability? It's a misplaced trust if you do. A misplaced trust. There is only one true and lasting object of safety and security. It's the Lord. Solomon makes that clear here. Absolutely clear. His name is a strong, impenetrable, impregnable tower, fortress. Don't be deceived and think that wealth offers true and lasting hope. Finally, 16th observation. We finally made it to the end of the list. After 4 weeks, a 16th observation that Solomon made about wealth in this world. Wealth is a way to glorify God. Turn over to Proverbs chapter 3, verses 9 and 10. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 9 and 10. Here we see Solomon give a strong exhortation to use money and material possessions to the glory of God. Verse 9. Honor, and that's a key word, honor the Lord from your wealth and from the first of all your produce. So your barns will be filled with plenty, and your vats will overflow with new wine. To honor the Lord means that a man thinks of the Lord as supremely worthy. And then he goes on to demonstrate the Lord's supreme worth in a tangible way. It means to esteem God as having value and to demonstrate it in a meaningful way. Here, that meaningful way is not with words, not just lip service to the Lord, but with wealth. Honor the Lord from your wealth and from the first of all your produce. Show the Lord, in other words, show the Lord to be supremely worthy and deserving of praise. Express gratitude to Him. Pay homage to Him. How? By opening your wallet, opening your pocketbook, giving from those things, or by giving from the fruit of your field in this context. In a nutshell, Solomon basically says, worship the Lord with your wealth. Worship the Lord with your wealth. And it's not just about giving to God the leftovers, the scraps, the spare change that you can round up at the end of the week, at the end of the day. After you've spent all of your wealth on your own needs and wants, it's about giving to the Lord what is best, your best. We aren't to honor the Lord with our wealth lastly, but firstly. Honoring the Lord shouldn't be the last thing we do with our wealth. It should be the first thing we do with it. Solomon says, honor the Lord from the first of all your produce. The first of all your produce. Under the Old Covenant, all Israelites, not just farmers, every single Israelite, were expected to give the best portion, the first fruits of their income or their produce to the Lord. Since the Lord was the provider of His people, since He was the one who gave the ability and the power to make wealth, you see that in Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 18, and He gave riches and honor, 1 Chronicles 29:12, and gave all things from His hand. He opens His hand and satisfies the desires of every living thing. 1 Chronicles 29:14. Gave an abundance of things, 1 Chronicles 29:16. Since God was the supreme giver and provider of his people were in turn to give back to him. He gives to them, he gives back to them. Not because he needed it or had any lack and deficiency, but as a show of gratitude and faith in his provision. It was a tangible way for them to demonstrate their trust in God and their acknowledgement of his goodness and grace in their lives. And so God said, honor me with the first of all your produce. Take a portion of it, the first of it, the best of it. Worship me with what I have provided for you. Thank me in a tangible way, a meaningful way, with the wealth I gave to you. Give me the best, not the scraps, not the leftovers. And beloved, I know that's under the old covenant, but I think there's a principle for us to apply to our own lives here. We aren't part of an old covenant community that is mandated to give the first of all of our produce. Most of us don't even have fields and crops that we're going to take from and give back to the Lord. But the principle of giving God our first and best, still something that we can live by. It's still true that God gives the ability and the power to make wealth. Deuteronomy 8:18. He gives riches and honor, gives all things from his hand, gives an abundance of things. And since God is our supreme giver and provider, we should in turn give back to him as a show of gratitude and faith for his provision, acknowledging his goodness and grace as a tangible demonstration of our trust in him. One commentator said this: earthly substance is necessary for the use of our bodies, but we are called to make a nobler use of it than by merely serving ourselves. We are to honor the Lord with it, making no use of any part of our increase till we have set apart a reasonable proportion of it for the service of God. God needs nothing from our hands, but he does require us to render back to him a portion of all he gives for the decent support of his worship and for the care and support of others. Is it any hardship to give a portion to him from whom we have received all? A rhetorical question? No, not at all. Of course I could give back to him. Can we make a better use of our wealth than by serving God with it? By this means we honor the Lord. He is our creator. Our bodies belong to him. He is our redeemer. Our souls are saved by him, and he is our provider. Our substance comes from him. Therefore, glorify him with such things. Our substance belongs to him, and we must honor him with it by a liberality in his service, proportioned to the extent of his bounty. Beloved, we need to honor the Lord with our wealth, monetary resources, things that he has given to us. And the amazing thing here, and again, Solomon observed this to be true in life. As we do, the Lord reciprocates with abundance. It's striking. I mean, it's like, Solomon, are you preaching a health, wealth, and prosperity gospel? Verse 10. After you've honored the Lord with your wealth, your first and best, he says, so your barns will be filled with plenty and your vats will overflow with new wine. Is that a promise? No, it's not a promise. This is a proverb. Proverbs are not promises. But again, Solomon said, this is generally true. This is how God works. In other words, when you honor the Lord with your wealth and give to him your first and best, then he will make sure that you have no lack. You'll have your needs met. He will provide plenty, more than enough. The Lord takes care of those who honor him. When you honor the Lord with your wealth, then he reciprocates abundance to you. Solomon says that's a principle that's generally true in life. Always true? No. Guaranteed? No. But generally true? Yes. He observed it to be true. Again, beloved, wealth is a way to glorify God. Worship the Lord with your wealth. And so those are the 16 observations that, and there's probably more that I missed in the book of Proverbs, but the 16 observations that Solomon made about wealth. Wealth is a blessing from God. Yes, I'm going to read through them again. Wealth is acquired with diligence and hard work. Wealth is the consequence of wisdom. Wealth is best gained by honest practices. Wealth is best earned gradually and slowly. Wealth is often targeted by society. Wealth is not measured by appearances. Wealth is power in this world. Wealth is a temptation to all kinds of evil. Wealth is often squandered. Wealth is good to share. Wealth is wise to save. Wealth is not the most important thing in life. Wealth is fleeting. Wealth is a false hope. And wealth is a way to glorify God. May these observations that Solomon made all throughout life help us to balance our finances well before the Lord. Help us to manage and steward our money and material possession in better ways. Amen? Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we're grateful for your word and all that you have revealed in it. Thank you for the past 4 weeks where we could walk through these biblical principles and Proverbs on the topic of wealth. I pray that you would help us, Lord, to manage these things that we have from you that are on loan to us by you. You own it all. It all belongs to you. Help us to manage these things well and to use these things that you have provided for us for your glory, caring for the needs of the saints, using it to advance your kingdom and your gospel purposes, making Christ known to the ends of the earth, and seeing his glory on display and seeing salvation come to future generations and even in this generation. Pray that you would help us to use our wealth to that end. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.